Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Okay, so I took a little bit of time off from filming videos. Today I have my March wrap up for you, and I may be a little more sporadic with the videos that I have coming out. I want to try and do at least one a week, but I'm kind of sort of thinking about how much I want this to take over my life and just kind of what I want to do with this channel. I'm still going to be telling you about the books that I read. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm kind of just trying to take some of the pressure that I have put on myself. And one of the biggest ones is feeling like I have to have 3 videos a week. And I feel like that kind of coincides with some things that have been going on with my reading. I have definitely slowed down my reading pace. I've said that a lot this last year, but March even more so. I only read 11 books in March, and I just really want to get back to being true to myself as a reader, and being true to myself as a reader is taking my time with books and not feeling like I need to rush through them or read what everybody else is reading or try and just reading books to make content. So I mean, that's sort of what I did in March. I feel like March was a month where I was pretty true to myself overall, and I indulged in things that I haven't done since I started this booktube channel. So anyway, that's just to say I'm not going anywhere, but I am definitely considering how much time I want to invest in booktube right now, you know? So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the books that I read in March. I read 11 books, and only 7 of them were new to me. I had 4 rereads, which was wonderful. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'll save my rereads for the end. And yeah, the first book that I read was called Almost Maybes. I did talk about this in a recent reads video, so I'm only going to briefly go over this. This is a contemporary romance. This is this author's debut, and I really enjoyed the romance in here. I thought it was very sweet. It was just so cute. I loved the setup of this with an older heroine, an older plus-size heroine. She's an Indian American woman, and her family is really trying to force her into this arranged marriage because they feel like that's what's best for her. She's kind of breaking against that. She's bisexual, and that's something also that her family sort of frowns upon a lot. And she's a bartender, and she's just really kind of enjoying life, but also feeling a little bit empty in some ways. And she ends up meeting this guy who is younger than her at the bar. He is sort of like this dorky, nerdy guy who has been very made aware of the fact that he is a little bit of a nerd by the girls that he's previously dated, and he's definitely dealing with some past heartbreak that affects how he sees relationships today. And our heroine had an abusive relationship that she had been in previously too. So they end up meeting together. They have the sweetest romance. Truly, this romance in here is one of the sweetest that I have ever read. I think this author captured that feeling of falling in love so well. It just was giving me butterflies. It was so relatable, and I just really, really loved that. The reason, and really the only reason this is a 3-star book for me, is that the third act conflict just felt like it came out of nowhere. It felt very ham-fisted and very didactic, and I wish that the author had taken a little more time to sort of lay the groundwork for that third act conflict, because I don't feel like that conflict was bad in itself. It was the fact that it came out of nowhere, and I didn't like that. So I definitely want to read more from this author because I think she has a ton of potential, and I really loved the romance, like I said, but it was a 3-star read. And then I read Slave to Sensation by Nailani Singh. This has been on my radar for a very, very long time. This book was gifted to me by Esty, and so I thought, now is the time. I was feeling some paranormal romance, and I read this and really, really loved it. I enjoyed the premise of this so much. I think this has such a clever premise where you have the Psy who cannot feel emotion. They've really been like regulated to not feel emotion, not express emotion, love, or anything like that. And then you have the changelings who are very much ruled by their passions and their love. And then you have this couple that is meeting because they're trying to solve this murder mystery of what is happening in the changeling world. And there's a lot of mystery to this. The romance was really great. There was great chemistry between this couple, and this was just a really fantastic debut, and I gave it 4 stars. And I read Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young. This was one of the, well, I mean, I'm listing these in order. I read this early on in the month, and I really enjoyed this. I really liked the author's writing style. I really loved this hero. This hero is so freaking swoony. And I also really liked the heroine, but I gave this book 4 stars for a couple of reasons. So the setup of this is really like they meet, their friends are friends, so they're part of this friend group. They end up meeting on New Year's Eve, and they have this really great connection, and they share a New Year's Eve kiss, and then she sort of like immediately leaves, and she gets scared, and then time passes, and you never find out really why they didn't end up have anything happening, because it's very clear that he had a lot of feelings for her, and it's implied that she was a little afraid, and so she, you know, skedaddled out of there because she's really dealing with some grief issues that she has, and that's affected her entire worldview, the loss of her father. It's a big theme of this book, so if you are at all sensitive to death of a parent and talk about grief, I would avoid this one because it's a heavy theme in here for sure. So eventually they end up sort of thrown together, the hero and heroine again, when she ends up in a moment of trying to reclaim her life and overcome this grief. She buys this bus. She's going to transform into this little mobile home, and the hero is the one who ends up helping her do it. So the heroine is struggling with a lot of things in this book, and they're all internal mental struggles, and because of those struggles, she really has a hard time being there for the hero, and he routinely, again and again and again, just extends himself to her, bends over backward, just absolutely worships this woman, and it is a beautiful thing, but it did feel a little bit uneven there, and I was hoping that maybe she would kind of swing the other way and do the same for him. And when she does work out her issues, she does eventually, but it's a little hard for me to buy into a romance, especially when the hero is that amazing, when I don't really understand the connection that they have. You know, I just didn't feel like that connection was on page as much as I would have liked to really feel like, why are you with her? Like, you're this amazing guy, you could do better than her. But anyway, also there was mention of infertility in the epilogue, which just annoyed me. I just hate that so much. Like, I don't know why that needed to be added at the very last second. I wish it hadn't been. So 4 stars for that one. Okay, and then I read The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, and I gave this one 3 stars. This is a sports romance, very beloved. She's his assistant. He's like her boss. They end up in this forced arrangement. He's this extremely powerful football player. They end up in a forced marriage because green card reasons and things like that. And I liked a lot of this book, but it was just 3 stars for me. I felt like everything about this book was just very mid. It didn't wow me at all, and I just was hoping for more romantic development and more relationship development, and this felt really a lot like it was just living their everyday life and a little tiny bit of interaction thrown in, and then, oh wait, they love each other, and there's one sex scene, and I just was like, I don't know why this is so popular, but 3 star for me. Okay, and then I read The Witch Collector. I've been really loving fantasy romance, like, this whole year. It's been my vibe, fantasy romance. The Witch Collector is a book that really intrigued me because I saw a piece of fan art. If I can find a picture of the fan art, I will put it right here because it just, like, I just loved it so much. And I was getting vibes from what the author said about this book, that the hero was a very Aragorn type of hero, and he is. He really is. He's a very honorable man. He is the Witch Collector. There is this powerful ruler in another country, and he needs to have a witch, taken from this neighboring development and brought to him, so that's the Witch Collector's job. And when he goes to collect this witch, who is the sister of the girl he took previously for the king in this other land, war breaks out from this neighboring bad guy kingdom, and chaos ensues. So the heroine ends up forced to travel with the Witch Collector, even though she's the witch and he's the Witch Collector. And I really had high hopes for this book, and I gave it a 3 star, but I think it's probably a high 3 star, like a 3.5. I really liked the world. I thought the world was really good. I loved the hero. The heroine was great too. I thought the magic was pretty complex and interesting, but the pacing of this book just felt really slow. It just seemed to drag, like we were not going anywhere. So I gave this book 3.5 stars, and I do want to continue on in this series because I hear it gets better, and I thought the author's writing was solid. I really liked the setup, and the characters had potential. I also felt like the romance in here was too insta-lusty, which for me really diminishes any Aragorn type features of a hero, so that was disappointing. I know, I'm a prude. I don't even care. I'm so tired of insta-lust. I just hate it. Okay, next one is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is, my goal this year is to complete the Mistborn series. I've read the first generation. I haven't read the second generation, but I'm going back to the very beginning, and I read, this is Brandon Sanderson's debut fantasy, high fantasy, and I really enjoyed this. I thought this was very fun. It has really readable writing. I think Brandon does such a great job on creating these worlds and plots and stories. I think he's just a great storyteller, and I gave this one 4 stars. The basic premise of this is we have an arranged marriage between 2 kingdoms, and the prince ends up waking up with this magical illness, basically. And it's so terrible that when he wakes up with this illness, which kind of like results in his body dying, almost like a zombie, but not quite a zombie, so his skin turns gray. If he gets injured, they never heal. It's a magical ailment. So he ends up getting sent to Elantris, which is where everyone goes who has this illness, like they're sentenced there for life. And he's just like, well, my life is over. And then we end up finding out exactly what happens with the magical illness, like why Elantris exists. There's a little bit of a romance, which was very sweet. There's a third character who is like this priest, which was very intriguing and interesting with all of the complexities of religion and what that has to do with this illness and this world. And I just thought this was really great. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, and I think that's largely because some of the pacing did feel a little bit choppy, and I felt like the characters could have had more development in some areas, but the overall story was really fantastic, and I had a good time with this one, so 4 stars. Okay, and then I read 6 Scorched Roses, which is the novella by Carissa Broadbent. This is like 1.5 in her Nyaxia vampire series. This is connected to her current series, but it's with different characters. So this is a vampire romance, basically fantasy romance, and in this world, in 6 Scorched Roses, we have our heroine who is ill in some way. She's dying. Eventually, she knows that she is dying, but her sister, there's this big plague that is affecting her hometown, and her sister is dying, and she knows that she doesn't have much time. And so the heroine has this idea that maybe the vampire's blood could be put to use to stop this disease from killing people. So she goes to this very powerful vampire and makes this bargain with him to give him 6 roses in exchange for his blood. And I thought this was really good. This was very fast-paced, great character development in here. Really loved the romance in here. It was very romantic and gothic in feel, and I felt like the plot in here was really clever. I did give it 4 stars instead of 5 stars because I felt like there were some plot issues that were kind of left dangling that weren't really wrapped up, and specifically surrounding the roses and things like that. And I also felt like everything just in general felt a bit rushed. The romance felt a bit rushed. The world, or the plot, felt a bit rushed, even though it was so interesting and intriguing. So yeah, this was a solid read. I gave it 4 stars. Now we're moving on to my rereads. So I really had a tough time focusing on books, specifically like audiobooks. I was really struggling to pay attention to audiobooks. So Jesson suggested, and she suggested this to me before, and I have done this before, but sometimes when I'm in that moment of reading slump, I just am sort of like, I don't know what to do. I know what to do, but I'm not going to do it, so I didn't do it. Anyway, she suggested that I do a reread. So I did, and I went with one of my favorite books of all time, which is Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I have a reading vlog dedicated to this, which is pretty emotional, which talks about my feelings about romance in general, the current state of romance books in general. This book broke my reading slump, finally. This is a 6-star read for me. I have read this book so many times, I feel like I could recite the first 10 chapters to you, just without even looking at it. This book is so formative to my reading journey. It feels like it's like a part of me. I love it so freaking much. It's a YA book, and it is fantasy with romance in it. It was published in 2011, and at the time, in 2011, I was writing a blog. I was a book blogger, and I got sent a physical arc of this book, which I still have to this day. It's one of the few physical arcs that I kept, and I read it, and I immediately was like, oh my goodness, this book, this author is incredible. It completely blew my mind. I loved it so much. So 12 years ago, I read this book for the first time. I've read it multiple times over the years, so many times that it started to sort of, I knew it too well. I needed some time away from it. So it's been about 5 years probably since I read it, and I just absolutely fell in love with it, and it changed my mindset about what I want from romance. And mostly, not that it changed, this is something I've been talking about a lot. I want romance. I want the falling in love. I want the longing. I want the feelings. And I feel like so much romance today is purely spice driven because of TikTok, and I really super hate that. Anyway, I've ranted about that quite a lot. So the basic premise of this book is we have this human girl living in Prague with some monsters, but nobody knows that they are monsters. They're her adoptive parents, and they end up raising her. So she ends up going on these basically like, this guy just slow drove by me, he was staring at me the whole time. Yeah, I'm talking to my phone, okay? I'm talking to my friends. Anyway, this guy, the dad, her father figure, his name is Brimstone. They're monsters. They're parts of animals that are like pieced together. So he has like a ram's head and other animal types. They're chimera, basically, is what they are. And he will send her on errands to go and collect teeth. And she never knows what he uses the teeth for. She does end up finding out later. And things start to go wrong when she's going on these errands, she notices that there is a black handprint scorched into the door of every place that she goes to collect these teeth. Pretty soon, terrible things happen to our heroine, and she ends up meeting the man who is leaving these, he is a man, she's technically like 18 or something like that. She ends up meeting this man who is an angel, a seraphim. It's not an angel in the terms of like a religious type, and that's something I really like about this book, is we have like demons and angels, but they're not like religious at all. They're otherworldly. It's very interesting. She ends up meeting him and realizes he is the source of the scorched handprints, and she also falls in love with him. So, and then this spans 3 books. So I read all of the books. Daughter of Smoke and Bone I gave 6 stars. Originally gave it 5 stars because I wasn't doing 6 stars at the time. Absolutely loved it. I think this is one of the most perfect urban fantasy romances I've ever read in my life. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful writing. Such great emotion in these characters, such unique and clever world building. I think this book is just fantastic. I still have not ever read anything that comes close to this. This is just perfection in every way. So, 6 stars for that one. The next book is Days of Blood and Starlight, which is very much a bridge book because everything that happened in the first book, we're living with those consequences before we get to our final resolution in the next book. So this book is really like a book of misery. Bad things are happening. Our hero and heroine are separated, and she's trying to survive in this world and help her people survive and defeat the angels in this war. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was very powerful, very moving, just chef's kiss perfection. Loved it. And then we come to the third book, which is Dreams of Gods and Monsters. This book, I still remember when this book came out and I read it as one of the biggest disappointments to a series that I've ever read. I had such high hopes for this book, and at the time I gave it 4 stars. I still kept my 4-star rating, but I think it's more realistically a 3-star rating because this book really does tie up all of the loose ends in the world, but it also provides a lot of unanswered questions. New characters are introduced, new world building elements are introduced, and they do have a connection to her next series, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but I didn't feel like they were necessary for this book, and because the world ended up, instead of narrowing down into our characters and trying to bring peace to this world and have a great resolution to the war and the battle and our characters that we know and love, we had a lot of new world elements, new world conflicts, new characters introduced. And so instead of narrowing down onto our characters, it felt like we were broadening and bringing all of these new elements in, and I feel like that created in a very watered down ending to this world, which was disappointing. So 3-4 stars. I mean, in my heart of hearts, Laini Taylor is so dear to me. I held her writing in such high regard, and that will always affect my star ratings. If the writing is that good, it's going to get a higher star rating. Absolutely. I mean, that's just the kind of reader that I am. So 3.5, 4 stars for this one. A slightly disappointing ending to this, although we do get a happily ever after with our couple. Okay, and then the last book that I read is Strange the Dreamer. This is also a reread. So all of these Laini Taylor books that I read are rereads. These are books that I've read years and years ago that I really loved. Now, Strange the Dreamer I only read once when it was released, and then I never finished the series. So I was reading this so I could get to Muse of Nightmares, which I am actually reading right now. So Strange the Dreamer is such a beautifully creative, emotional book. It was a BookTube darling many years ago, and for good reason. It's got Laini Taylor's beautiful writing, really great characters that you can just hold on to and feel so connected to and so emotional with, and following their journey. Like, the hero in this book, Laszlo Strange, is one of the most precious characters I have ever read about. I love and adore him so much. He is so pure and innocent and just I want to protect him at all costs. And then Sarai is the love interest, and she is the daughter of a god spawn. Laszlo is a human boy who is very fascinated with this magical city called Weep that has sort of been blocked out of the memory of everybody. He's an orphan, he's living in a library, and he's just fascinated with this world and learns everything he can about it. And finally, these people from this other world come here, and he gets a chance to go and travel with them and adventure with them, and that's where he meets Sarai, and they have a forbidden romance, and it is just heartbreakingly beautiful. I think something that Laini Taylor does so well, even though these books are YA, and this is why I love them and this is why I recommend them. You know, I think a lot of YA books, when adults read them, they feel like this is a little immature, this is a little juvenile, and for good reason. They're written for teens. They're written for teens with teen problems, high school girls, mean girls, boys, dating, all this other stuff, right? They should feel that way for their target audience. There are some YA books that hold universal appeal, I feel like, because they tap into those feelings of falling in love for the first time, or that cusp of being on adulthood. That is something that people can relate to. Anybody on the planet, because you've been through that, you've lived through that. So I think that this book, while it does have young adult characters and Daughter of Smoke and Bone, it never feels juvenile, it never feels young, it never feels like these are kids, right? I feel like this book is mature in the writing. The characters are mature, but not in the way where they feel like adults. They're mature as in they're emotionally mature, and you can see that they're seeing certain things in the world for the first time, like falling in love. So they have that wonder, that innocence, that feeling of this is so fresh and new, and every touch, every glance, it's like this is the first time I've kissed someone, this is the first time I've had these feelings, and it's just so beautiful, and I think she captures that perfectly. And in my opinion, I feel like this is such a more effective romance than something that is just a smutty thing with an 18-year-old or even a 17-year-old, but you throw in an adult man and then you add some sex scenes and you can call it a romance, and I'm just sort of like, that is not the book for me at all. But something like these Laini Taylor books that really tap into that feeling of falling in love for the first time, meeting your person and knowing that that's who you want to be with, but also that just that wholesomeness, that innocence that hasn't been touched and tarnished by the world, that hopefulness of first love. It's just so beautiful. So I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. All right, there you have it. That is my March wrap up. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I know it was a little rambly, but thank you so much for watching. And if you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me a blue heart, and I'll see y'all in my next video.